Hey guys, this is Janine from Pangolin. Welcome back to my Lightroom course for wildlife photographers. After we've now learned how to import and organize our pictures, I want to teach you your first basic editing steps today. If you know nothing else, those editing steps are pretty much all you need to know to fix up a good photograph. Let's get started. For this lesson, I would like you to have a look at the image with the fish eagle in front of the elephant with me. If you don't have that image yet, please check out the files on our homepage. You can download the raw files if you sign up for the Lightroom course for free. Editing or post-processing your images is a very vast field, and opinions tend to differ from the purist who doesn't think editing should be done at all the way to the digital artist that completely changes an image from the inside out. Lightroom isn't there to really change an image drastically. We cannot turn this fish eagle into the elephant and the other way around. However, every image in wildlife photography tends to be taken in a little bit of a rush. We never know when the bird takes off or the animal walks away. We're not sure which position we can take up. So sometimes composition and settings are just not spot on. Those basic editing steps I'm going to guide you through today are just there to fix minor details in your image to get that perfect shot out there. Also remember that a raw file is just a loose composition of data that still needs to be put together the way you would prefer it. There's many different ways and tastes differ. Find out what you like. But since you're a wildlife or nature enthusiast, I'd suggest to keep things as natural as possible given the technique that you have applied to your image. Let's get started. Up to now, we've been working in our library module, and I'm sure you guys are itching to get to develop your images. You've learned the Lightroom structure, how to keyword an image. Now it is time to switch our chapter into the development panel. You'll see our film strip remains present, our picture remains present, but our options both to the left and to the right have changed a bit. Again, on the left-hand side, we have our organizational structure. However, the only thing remaining is both our navigator and our collections. We don't have our catalog or our folder structure anymore. Instead, it has been replaced by presets, which you can play around with, however, really applicable for the various wildlife situations that we work in. Our snapshots, as well as our history. And our history is our most important factor. You see, there is a lot coming up. I have worked on this image before, and I have reset all our settings. So every single move you do, every single change you do will be recorded, including all the exports. And I've been working on this image back and forth. As you can see, I've been using as an example. I'm going to go all the way to our import back in October 2019. On the right hand side, we have our development panel. And today we're going to look at the basics as well as our details. I believe a very good photograph shouldn't need much more than these two development panels. On the top, we have our histogram that explains our exposure values, and down below we have local adjustments. Local adjustments are changes we make specifically to a certain area of the photograph. Today we're only going to look at our cropping tool. In later modules throughout Lightroom, we'll have a closer look at the other local adjustment tools. The reason I chose this image as an example is because we have very bright areas as well as very dark and shady areas and quite a regular neutral tone in the background. Plus, we have a beautifully crooked horizon. So perfect to start off with. Let's get started with the cropping. The cropping allows us to change a lot in our composition. If we don't like what we have done and we gave ourselves enough space, we can fix our composition in retrospective. If we go to the corners, we get a flat area that allows to drag our arrows in and out. And if we go a little bit further out, we get a rounded curve that allows us to twist and turn. You will see our history is now starting from new. We've started from importing and I'm now showing you the crop tool. If you do not want the corner to pull into one side, but you would like your image to remain centered, it helps to press the Alt or Option key while you're pulling the corner in, and you will have your image centered. If you press the X key on your keyboard, we'll change the format of our frame from a landscape format to a portrait format. Down here to the right, we had a new panel that opened as soon as we pressed the crop tool, and we have the option to change the aspect ratio of our image to anything we need. If you like to change it from your original aspect ratio, you will have to unlock the lock button here, and then you have the option to customize your aspect ratio to anything you would prefer. As long as I personally don't know what I want to do with my image yet, I like to keep the original aspect ratio and keep all images the same. If I know I need a square image because that's what suits my wall space, I can change my aspect ratio right here. We also have a little angle that allows us to rotate the image this way. Anytime you change a slider on Lightroom and you would like to go back to the original position, you can double click the little arrow and it will go back to naught. The angle tool can alternatively be used by pressing our little ruler, and if we have a crooked horizon such as here, we can simply follow the horizon line by drag and dropping our mouse alongside it, and it will straighten our image out. In this case, I'm not a big fan of straightening it out according to this horizon line, because I think we will eventually crop it out. It's a little bit of a distraction in the background, and I will rather orientate according to this horizon line, which will have our elephant tilting down less. I enjoy having the fish eagle sit on the right hand third of this image. The grid will help you with the rule of thirds. It will allow both the fish eagle and the elephant in the background to look to the left hand side. We're going to press enter or return, and that will confirm our selection of the crop. Now we can continue to our basic panel. Our basic panel holds a little bit of everything, but is mainly focused on our temperature, our exposure of the image, and the vibrance and texture of the image at the end. A good picture doesn't need any more changing than the basic panel. Thereby, Lightroom has been set up chronologically so that it allows you to work from top to bottom in order to get the desired results. The nice thing in Lightroom is that if you're not sure what a slider is for, you can see the immediate effect when you just test it. Again, if you want to go back to naught, you just press the little arrow twice. If you would like a whole section to go back to naught, you can simply press the header twice and the entire section below will fall back in line. So let's get started. Looking at this image, I first want to see my settings. I press I twice and I see this image was shot on a fairly low shutter speed. Reason being is I tried to achieve a very high f-stop in order to increase my depth of field. I tried to make this elephant as visible as possible in the background, which drove my shutter speed down and my ISO up. Therefore, I don't need to be surprised if I see any motion blur or if I encounter any amount of noise. Let's have a look. The image seems pretty sharp given the distance to the subject, but I do feel that we have quite a little bit of noise, especially in the darker colors on the image. Next, I would like to have a look at our histogram. Our histogram displays our exposures all the way from the black point to the white point. If you guys would like to learn more about the histogram, please check out our Lightroom tutorial on YouTube with Danielle. On the histogram, we can see that we both have a little peak to the right hand side towards the white point, and we have the histogram touching all the way on the left hand side on our black point, meaning that we nearly have 100% white and 100% black in the image. Let's hover over the seemingly whitest part of our image, and you will see little percentage numbers appear underneath the histogram. These percentage numbers display how white we've gotten. If you hit 100%, we have burned the image and we have no details anymore to retrieve. I don't see 100% white anywhere around the fish eagle's neck, so we should be able to retrieve the details in this part of the image. Let's have a look at the darkest part of this image. If we hit 0%, once again our details are lost, but it looks like we just made it. Let's now begin with our basic panel. I find the temperature very appropriate. Often we only need to adjust it after changing our exposure. We tend to become a little bit too warm, but then we can adjust it in retrospective. Our overall exposure seems to be alright, judging on the basic neutral tone in the background. Maybe it is a little bit bright on the fish eagle and a little bit dark on the elephant, but that can be fine-tuned further down here. We have highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. The difference between highlights and whites and shadows and blacks is that we work in different areas of our histogram. While the highlights sit here within our histogram, the whites sit all the way to the right hand side. So by pushing the white slider, we have the option to push the histogram completely off the scale so that we clip the white point and burn our image. That option we don't have with our highlights. The way I tend to work is I start with the whites, and it is quite difficult to judge where we should be sitting, so there is that beautiful rule of thumb we can make use of. While taking the white slider, we can press the Alt or Option key and then pull our white slider until we just don't see any white in this image anymore. The same we do with our black point. We press the Alt and Option key and we want to pull our slider until we just don't see any blacks, because that is the moment we're losing our details. In this instance, we have to adjust very little to our whites and our blacks. An alternative option would be to activate both our white point and our black point, which will show blue once we get too dark or red once we become too white. Afterwards, we can fine adjust these tones with the shadows and highlights. We've agreed that the darks might be a tad too dark, so we can pull the shadows out a little bit to provide more detail in the tip of the black feathers of the fish eagle as well as the bum of the elephant. At the same time, the neck of the fish eagle seems to be losing the feathers around the outline that was illuminated by the sun. So we can bring those details back by adjusting the highlights. Highlights are a great tool because it can bring back details in a burnt sky so you can see your clouds better, feathers in a bird, as well as wrinkles on an elephant. Immediately you have a lot more details, and by pushing your whites and your blacks according to this rule of thumb, you are supposedly having a perfect exposure, also displayed by your histogram, which is not so crunched to the corners anymore. Now we can start playing with the texture, clarity, vibrance, and saturation of the image a little bit. But be very careful that you don't over edit. You quickly get a tone that is too warm, or you quickly get too much crunch in an image so that it starts looking unnatural. Also be aware that adding clarity might make your noise in your image worse, especially if you've been shooting on a high ISO to start with. If you're happy with your exposure and the temperature of your image, you can close your basic development panel and go to details. Why do we specifically concentrate on details? The reason is that we have shot this image as a RAW, and RAW files are per definition not sharpened. They're a bit soft on the edges. So you will see that Lightroom automatically sharpens a RAW file by a certain amount depending on what RAW file you have. A JPEG image would be starting off at 0. Now you can take this detail window, click on it, and choose an area that is relevant to your subject matter. To make it more visible, you can also choose to zoom in with your navigator. So by sharpening our image, we can get a more crispy outline to the fish eagle, but at the same time you see a very nasty pixelation appear throughout the entire surface area of our image. The higher our ISO and the stronger our noise, the quicker the pixelation will appear. So we need to be very careful not to over sharpen our image, especially if you would like to print it in a bigger format afterwards. A little trick for that is that we do really not need to sharpen the entire image. There's no need of sharpening this lower belly of the elephant because it is slightly soft anyway with that shallow depth of field. It is just supposed to be a shape in the background. So an alternative would be to mask only the strongest outlines of the image, because that is what our eye picks up on. Our eye follows the areas with the biggest contrast rather than analyzing every single surface area around the image. So we can mask our image by pulling our masking slider, and you'll see that the pixelation goes away out of some areas of the image. What are we actually doing? By pressing the Alt and Option button, it becomes better visible. Right now, on a masking of 0, the area looks white and everything that is white is being sharpened. As we pull the masking slider, we're crystallizing the subject out of our image, and only what is white will remain to be sharpened. You might agree with me that these areas are the most important areas to get sharp around our image. And once we've ensured that the surface area is being left alone, we can sharpen these contrasty outlines a little bit stronger than initially suggested by Lightroom. Your detail panel also has a noise reduction slider, which some people love to use. However, please remember that noise reduction means that pixels are joined together. I want to show you the effect. If we have a look at the initial noise in our image, and I pull my noise reduction all the way to the right, you get a very good idea what noise reduction is doing. It is melting down all the pixels into one pot, and it starts looking almost like a watercolor painting. If that is the effect you wanted to achieve, go for it. But if you don't want to have a comic-like outline around your animal, please be aware that noise reduction needs to be handled very carefully. Alrighty guys, to sum it up, if you have a sharp and well-exposed image, you don't need to do much more than crop it to the format that you would enjoy, fine-tune the exposure and maybe the toning, as well as get your image perfectly sharp. Then you're done and dusted. With those tools at your hand, you've finished editing. And even though this module might have taken quite a while, once you get used to Lightroom, you can do this in 30 seconds and less. Let me show you. Done. See, that was quick and easy. I really hope you enjoyed this module, guys. It gave you a good idea how to start and how to tackle your editing with your photographs. Lightroom is really so intuitive. If you're not sure what a slider does, simply test and try it out. And remember, you can't break anything because you can always go back in your history, go back to any of the steps you've done. Nothing is going to be lost. If you guys would like to learn more, please stay tuned, guys. I will start explaining more advanced Lightroom techniques, both through this and the subsequent Lightroom course. Bye-bye.